So one of the moves that we knew the Trump administration would be trying to make pretty quickly after Trump's inauguration was to move the embassy of the United States in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And I've explained why this is an absolutely terrible idea. And the gist of it is that within Israel, there are, of course, many people that consider Jerusalem to be the capital of the country. But internationally, Jerusalem is a disputed territory. It's sort of like if internationally Washington, D.C. was the capital of the United States. But imagine that internally, we sort of thought that New York was our capital, but we were in a land dispute with Canada over New York, right? Sort of an analogous situation, an imaginary analogy. Currently, West Jerusalem is considered part of Israel. East Jerusalem is considered part of the Palestinian territories, with the old city within that under Israeli control, but with a particular part of the old city with jurisdiction given back to the Palestinian Authority. Very complicated situation. But the long and short of it is that the future of Jerusalem is, by all reasonable accounts, part of what would be negotiated in a peace agreement, hypothetically, if we ever got to that point again. And of course, with Jared Kushner leading that crusade, doesn't seem like we're going to get there anytime soon. So internationally, Tel Aviv is the capital of Israel. That's where the United States has had its embassy. Donald Trump's choice for ambassador to Israel, we learned pretty early on, was going to be and eventually became David Friedman. And as soon as we knew that David Friedman was going to be the guy to be the U.S. ambassador to Israel, we knew that a top priority would be to move the embassy to Jerusalem. Friedman is the epitome of a right-wing extremist on the issue of Israel. He is of the mindset that more settlements are good, which is in the spectrum of views on settlements. To really understand how wacky that position is, you've got to understand what the sort of range of positions is. And the range tends to be something like demolish all settlements and get out completely, give that land back to Palestinians. Stop building new ones, but presume that existing settlements may be allowed to stay if there are meaningful land swaps in exchange as part of a peace agreement. Get the current settlements to stay, but only if there's some kind of integration with Palestinians, right? There's all these sort of different views. The extremist view is not only are the settlements not a problem, but we should be building even more settlements. And that's the view of Donald Trump's ambassador to Israel, David Friedman. So completely retrograde on that issue. And Trump has been touting that moving the embassy to Jerusalem will actually be a good thing with respect to possible peace talks between Israelis and Palestinians, because it'll take Jerusalem off the table, right? Trump's idea is, listen, right now, the issue of Jerusalem is a negotiating issue. If we just move the embassy to Jerusalem and, more importantly, recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, we're taking it off the table for future negotiations. And of course, I cannot imagine a more short-sighted and childish view of the situation. The unilateral decision to move the embassy without it being part of an agreement is only going to inflame the situation and make it more difficult to even get people to the table to do the negotiation. And of course, violence is escalating completely predictably. At least 25 already dead in the Gaza Strip in the midst of growing protests against this move of the embassy. Hamas, of course, benefiting greatly, vowing even more protests. Hamas, as I've told you, always acting with no regard whatsoever for the safety of the Palestinian people. And this will in turn be used to justify even more pushback by Israeli forces, and the cycle continues, this endless cycle. And at the end of the day, we see who it is that influences Donald Trump. It's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a vile right-winger connected to the most extreme elements of the Israeli political spectrum. He has gotten just major concessions from Trump over the last several weeks. Trump has announced that he's going to pull the United States out of the Iran deal, which Netanyahu, of course, loves hearing from Donald Trump. It's a totally backwards move geopolitically. Trump now following through on moving the embassy to Jerusalem, initially a sort of provisional embassy with a bigger build out coming in the future. That's another move that strengthens Benjamin Netanyahu's hardliner stance. And at this point, I'm genuinely unsure about whether Netanyahu has even offered Donald Trump anything in response for all of this, right? In other words, did Netanyahu simply manipulate Trump into doing what he wants Trump to do? without having to offer anything? Or is there some quid pro quo here, right? Either real or promised or hypothetical going on in the background. It's possible that there is a quid pro quo. It's also very possible that Donald Trump has merely done this because he's convinced that it's the correct or cool thing to do. And Benjamin Netanyahu has bamboozled him into doing it. And when we talk about the future of Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, a guy who is the subject of multiple criminal investigations, a guy whose wife is also being looked into for criminal activity, it's the type of guy Trump loves, right? Benjamin Netanyahu is in the direction, although not clearly as far as people like Rodrigo Duterte and President Erdogan of Turkey and Kim Jong-un of North Korea. These are the types that Trump likes, and that's why it's not even remotely surprising that Netanyahu seems to have, and Putin, who can forget Putin? Netanyahu seems to have Donald Trump effectively wrapped around his finger. Disastrous decision made here, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about the horrible consequences over the coming weeks and months. The video you just finished watching was made possible by you through the membership program. You can sign up for membership at davidpakman.com/membership. We are viewer-supported independent media. You can use the coupon code IVOTED17 for a 40% discount off of your membership.